And welcome to Digital Disruption 2013. It's my great pleasure to be here with you this morning and to take you through a little bit of an opener into what we're seeing happening in the digital world and to set the scene for this very exciting conference. This is a conference TM Forum's been running for about 12 years, but it's now reinvented and reimagined right here in the heart of Silicon Valley. For the next 10 or 15 minutes, I'm just going to take you through my observations and my views on what's happening out there in the market and some of the things I think TM Forum is helping to do. But it's going to be really for you to judge because this is your forum. This is your organization. We are a not-for-profit industry association that brings all of the ecosystem together. And what you're going to see this week is that in action, TM Forum Live. But before we get started, I wanted to give you a little bit of a story. About 6 months ago, I had a friend visiting me in London, and I took my youngest son and her daughter out to see the sights of London. And those of you who are familiar with London will know, right in the heart of the city, there is something called the London Eye, which is a big Ferris wheel with these big capsules that you can look out over a grainy, foggy London on an average day. And we took the kids on this because we wanted to educate them on the history of London and what they can see and so on. And no sooner have we walked into the capsule then there are, of course, 8 tablet PCs around. And what do the kids do? Well, they go straight to the tablet PCs. They're not interested in what's going on outside. They want to look at these and play with them. And as an adult, you think, well, come on, we've spent all this money to come on this, let's look at the sites. But for the kids, this is a perfectly normal thing because what the tablets were doing was giving them an augmented reality view of what they were seeing. So they could tap on a building, they could see the height of it, they could see what was going on. And what struck me when I was talking to my youngest son just the other day was, this is his memory of going on that. Not just the tablet, but what he learnt through that. So my inferior knowledge of the City of London compared to this device, for him it was perfectly normal to go on and consume something digitally. And that's because our kids today are growing up as digital natives. They have no concept of going to a device just because they need something. They just expect it. They expect it to be the way in which they communicate, and they expect it to be the way in which they consume information in an interactive way. It's a mashup, it's part of our daily life today, and it is the way for them that they consume music, movies, and so on. But what really is striking is to think that just 10 years ago, that wasn't the case. If we think that the changes we've seen in the last 10 years all around the world, not just for privileged kids living in London or out here in the Valley, but also the changes that digital technology is making for lives all around the world. It's a fascinating story to watch, and the TM Forum operates all around the world, so we have the great privilege of seeing the impact of digital technology on everything we do. And our recent Africa conference, we get to see an annual update on what's going on in use of technology in Africa, and even very simple technology making absolutely amazing differences. We're here concerned with whether we can order our Starbucks on our iPhone, whether we can consume the latest movie on a particular video streaming service. But in Africa, it's about whether you can get a text message from your water pump telling you whether that one's out of order that day. And so even very simple technology making the most dramatic differences. I think one of my favorite stories from this year's conference was about a new healthcare insurance plan. And that's, of course, a very interesting and well-debated topic here in the US. But in Africa, in Kenya specifically, they've just launched a healthcare program where you trade your animals for insurance. Because they are farmers who don't have cash, they don't have lots of capital sitting behind the scenes, but they do have stock. And that stock is in their livestock. And so they can actually trade, and they actually literally have on the mobile phone text-based system the number of sheep you need to pay for your healthcare insurance. So this digital revolution, not just affecting the developed world, but actually having a very fundamental effect on the developing world as well. And what's fascinating there, and I think very telling about the impact that digital will ultimately have, is the fact that in these economies, there is no need to then stand up the kind of physical infrastructure we would be used to. Mobile money in Africa, for example, has taken off at a phenomenal rate. And even the banks there now admit that there's no need to put in the kind of physical infrastructure they would be used to. So we see in the digital world today the kind of impact it's having all around the world, and I think we all have to take that seriously as the impact it can have. It's also having a dramatic impact as the population of the world grows very dramatically, and efficiency technologies such as smart grid, healthcare plans, and better use of the resources we have. Smart technology is absolutely integral to us being able to continue to use the resources of our planet very wisely. It's also having an effect closer to home for each of us individually as well. We can consume wellness apps, which are now one of the fastest growing sectors in the digital health market. And we have the ability to take care of ourselves in a different way and interact with services we would typically have to leave our office or our home to do so. But you have to put that in perspective. We're all walking around today with smartphones in our pocket and tablet devices and thinking, well, this is how it's always been. But it hasn't. We're talking about something that's happened just in the last decade. We've transformed and revolutionized a number of industries and turned several over in that time. And there's no company and no industry that is immune to that kind of change. And we have to take that seriously as we look this week at digital disruption and the impact it's going to have on all of our businesses. Even manufacturing, even things that we think need to be physical, are changing. This pair of New Balance sneakers, as you would call them here, or trainers as I would call them at home, printed the main part of the body of the shoe on a 3D printer. Yes, you have to do a little bit of fitting of the accessories on top, but the main part of the shoe. Now just think about that, what that means. That means they're not manufactured somewhere on the other side of the world with a generic foot shape and so on. We're at the very early stages of seeing a revolution in manufacturing as well. One where your custom shoe size can be built around that shoe, it can be printed out, easily made at low cost without all of the other infrastructure costs associated. So if you start to think about that, it's not just things that are obvious that can become digital, it's physical goods as well that can start to be changed by this revolution. Now, all of these factors are hugely disruptive to innovative business. New markets are being invented. We're sitting in one of the largest markets in the world that is truly revolutionizing and very much at the heart of this digital revolution. But it's disrupting many existing markets, and we'll hear this morning from some speakers who are right in the middle of that. And it's a very exciting place to be right here in the heart of Silicon Valley. But as we see around the world, the impacts of that, the changes it's making to every single business and for every single person are tremendous. It creates massive problems for established businesses, but those who can think and move fast enough, it also creates massive opportunity. So, what does it mean to be a digital business today? Well, the question I think every business has to ask itself is a bit like talking about my kids at the start, that they're growing up in a world where they just don't know any different. If you're a company that's grown up here in Silicon Valley in the last few years, you are a digital native as a business. It's in your DNA. You'll hear speakers this week talking about how data is in their DNA, how they think about the customer first. Many, many aspects that define a customer-centric digital business. But what does it mean for established businesses, some of the largest customers and largest businesses in the world? It means a dramatic change in thinking, a dramatic mindset shift. And it fundamentally changes the role of IT in the business as well. We're talking about markets where there's ultra low barriers to entry. You can start a new business very easily, and you can take it global very, very quickly, because you're talking about 6 billion people on the planet who have mobile devices. The most popular consumer device ever invented, and you have reached them without having to set up physical infrastructure and all the costs that go along with that. So there's no need to think regionally. You may have to tailor your service slightly, but you don't have to think about setting up in a new country. This means companies can be born overnight and reach astronomical valuations. And the hallmarks of entrepreneurship are built in at the heart of these businesses. So what are the kind of attributes that we see in a digital native business? First of all, it's hugely agile. They can think on their feet. I was just speaking to a good friend of mine yesterday who's recently made the switch from a big multinational company that will remain nameless, and he's gone to work for a Valley company that's about 5 years old, and they're growing very fast. And he said the biggest single difference is the speed at which they can make decisions. In the company he was working with before, he was waiting a week, 2 weeks. It's got to climb the ladder of management to make all the right decisions. In this company, he gets a call in the morning, says you've got to be on a plane to Rio at this time to go there to fix this problem, and that's just how they do business. And that's the difference in speed of decision making, and it's not just about the size of the company or the maturity of it, it's about the ethos of the company as well. It's about the efficiency of the business, how quickly it can scale and how cost effectively, because we're talking about a lot of new services here that are much lower margin than the ones that traditional businesses have been used to, because they don't have the monopoly. Most importantly, perhaps for the communications industry, which many of us come from, it's customer-centric. These companies will think in terms of the customer first. What is the customer's experience going to be of using this service? What does the customer want in that environment? And some of the most impressive services we see today have come from that mindset. And I'm sure many of us in the room would recognize that quite often in our companies we start with, well, what did the R&D lab cook up? Or what was the technology they could create? And then let's find a way of making that into a product. So it's a very different mindset. And it's software-centric all the way through. The digital world we're creating is also one that is partner-based. It requires companies to focus, think about what they're good at, and deliver on that. And that means stitching them together with partners around the world who they can work with seamlessly. It's also about having data in the DNA, not just to make the right decision, not just to prove a business case or to say, we've got the facts here that show X. It's about actually living by the data. And if you talk to companies like eBay and Google and so on, it is just in their DNA. Data is just part of daily life. They expect the analytics, and they've pushed their IT groups and their analytics teams to work as an integral part of the business. They're not just somebody you send off a request for a report and then 4 weeks later you might get the right result back. It's daily, it's instant, and they recognize that it has a direct and immediate effect on their profitability. Security, another big topic being discussed here this week, but one that I think everybody can recognize is essential in this complex, interwoven digital world, and one that we all have to take increasingly seriously, especially as we stitch together those different partnerships. And perhaps most importantly of all, realizing that the services you're creating are going to be consumed by a mobile audience. That's not just that it's on a mobile device, but people who are moving around. They need to be able to do things on the move. So thinking mobile first, thinking in terms of where the mobile fits into the particular service you're delivering and how it's used. All of these attributes make up a successful digital native. And unlike our children, we can't reprogram ourselves necessarily to be digital natives. We can reprogram our companies. And we have to take these concepts into our businesses and believe them, and that means very radical change and a lot of established business. So let me just tell you a little about where the forum fits into all of this. Now, TM Forum doesn't just organize conferences like this, and I know that about half our audience here this year are brand new, so you may not know a lot about us. We're actually a non-profit trade association, and we bring together some of the world's largest companies to tackle the challenges of making this transition to success in the digital world. And that's also applicable for companies who've grown up as digital natives and are now struggling with the challenges of scale, something that many of our members have been dealing with for some time. We have members all around the world, so we get a global perspective, and we're increasingly focused on all of the challenges I've been through this morning and how to attack those problems. And we do that through collaboration between our members, bringing them together to work on common challenges. And just one quote from the VIP reception we had last night that I saw some of you at. Somebody said to me, you know, I'm starting to realize that the problems I thought were just I had in my company, actually all the companies here have. And so the opportunity this week for all of you to network together and discuss, and the opportunity the forum can create, is for you to discuss those challenges and then turn them into tangible best practice and action. The three main areas that the forum is focused on starts, of course, with what's going on within your business. How agile is your company? How agile is your business and IT? And how are you transforming IT and operations to overcome the challenging costs that you have, the risks of that transformation, and dramatically improve your agility and time to market? And we have a broad range of topics that I'd be happy to talk you through this week. Out in the hub area where you came in, there's the TM Forum Zone, and you'll see many of our staff there in blue tops who can talk you through just some of the collaborative work that's been done. And you get to meet some of the members who are working together to solve many of these different challenges. Our customer engagement program, bringing together the best in the business to look at how you truly engage your customers, not just talking about figuring out how to give a small step-changing customer experience, but how you understand your customers, how you get a one-to-one relationship with them, how you get to the point that you can grow loyalty and see real growth in delivering services that they want. And doing that through topics like analytics, improved privacy, and looking at their overall experience. And thirdly, stitching the ecosystem together, quite a new program for us and something you'll hear a lot about later on this morning, is our Open Digital program, which looks at how the ecosystem can work together. When we're talking about partnerships, how do we make it easier to stand up that partnership faster and ensure it's successful in the long term? So delivering new types of services, and this is really binding the ecosystem together that the forum brings together here this week and as an organisation. And we have many different topics we're focusing on in this area, which we'd love to come and talk to you about during the week. Now, many of you may think, well, but I'm not a member. Well, what you may not realise is that with over 900 member companies, about 90% of the people in the room are members, because if your company is a member, you're a member. So this is your forum. We're here to serve you, and we hope this week to see you collaborating and working together, learning about what is open to you, and coming together as an industry with many different partners to find new business opportunities. Now, throughout the conference, we're going to hear on a broad range of the topics I've just briefly touched on. And this morning, you're going to hear a number of different opinions on the topics we've started to raise here. What I would encourage you to do is not just to listen, but also to talk and to take away from the conversations you have the most value. Because in my experience, that's where, at these types of events, you get the most out of it, is in the conversations you have over a coffee, over many of the networking opportunities we have this week. So I'll leave you with one final thought to carry with you throughout the week. In today's world, anything that can be digital will be. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nick. Well, following on from